And I was so worried about her, and I was so concerned, and I listened to her talk, and immediately these ideas came into my head, and I thought, well, Angie, you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this. And Angie said, she said what she had been doing and what she intended on doing, and I said, no, Angie, you need to do this, and this, and this, and this. And she kept trying to put these boundaries up, to draw these lines, to say, no, Leah, look, it's here. She wasn't drawing those lines to keep me out. She was drawing those lines to try to protect herself. And I didn't understand that. And I kept trespassing right over those lines, left and right. And when Angie says it ended badly, it did. When we parted ways, we really parted ways.
When we parted ways, I needed a couple of weeks to cool down. Because I did feel like all of these things, that she had some really good ideas that if I had been willing to be open to them might have been good, but I wasn't at a point where I could be open. And so I cooled down and I called, but she didn't call me back.
Because I was afraid. Because I knew that something had broken in us, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it, and I was afraid. It didn't feel like a conversation that we could have over the phone, and so she would call, and I wouldn't return her call.
And a couple weeks later, I would call, and she wouldn't return my call. And a couple months later, I would call, and she wouldn't return my call. And those weeks and months turned into a year.
A whole year.
A whole year.
I went a whole year without talking to this person who had become my sister.
We'd been in each other's weddings. She had her wedding reception in my parents' barn.
We'd been in each other's ordinations. Angie was one of the preachers at my ordination.
She baptized my goddaughter and niece on my ordination day. And for a year, we didn't talk at all. And then one Good Friday, because we're very liturgically in tune, on Good Friday, I called again and left a message, and she didn't call back.
So I had this message on my phone on Good Friday, the night when we talk about how Jesus was betrayed and beaten and hung on a cross and died. And this place in my life that had been so life-giving for all of these years, it felt like a dead place. But I was still really afraid. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. So I just kept going. And come Easter Sunday morning, I went into the sanctuary about 5:30 to practice my sermon. And I was standing there in the chancel in front of the altar, and I'm practicing my sermon, talking about how there are these things in life that are things of death, but God's love is bigger than that. God's love is stronger than that. And friends, this is the good news, that nothing can hold us in that place of death, because the resurrection is real. And then I immediately felt like a fraud. Like I was going to stand up there in front of my congregation and tell them the good news of the gospel, and yet I wasn't willing to live it in my own life. It wasn't that I couldn't. It was that I was letting fear have control. So I picked up my cell phone, and I called, and I left a message that said, Angie, it's Easter morning, and I don't know how I'm supposed to stand up here and preach this if I'm not willing to let God's love be alive in our lives. I don't understand what happened, and I don't know how to fix it, but at least I can try.
And so we began to try. And it was not easy, right? When you have been hurt, when you have hurt the other, it's not easy to build a reconciliation. But we talked and prayed and got together and talked some more. And it helped that at that time both of us were pregnant. And Leah had Chloe 3 months before I had Jameson. And so we found ways to be together, to celebrate. I got to have the most hysterical, really, because Leah is different than anybody else, the most hysterical message from her when she went into labor. But that's a coffee hour conversation. Really funny. And when it came time to have Jameson baptized, there is no one else that I would like to baptize my child than our family baptizer, Leah Robberts-Mosser. And Leah came and baptized Jameson in the congregation where I grew up, surrounded by family and friends, and talked about the ways that the congregation was making vows for all of the congregations that I would be a part of. How you were there at his baptism. It was beautiful. And then later that week, I was watching Chloe when Leah and her mom and her dad were at the doctor's and found out that her mother had had a reoccurrence of stage 4 uterine cancer. Her mother, who made this stole for me.
And it's because we had worked on this reconciliation. But then I could sit in the driveway in my car crying and saying to Angie, please, 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 will you come home and be there when my mom dies?
And I did.
And she did. And it's because we worked on this reconciliation that I was sitting at my desk a few winters ago and got that phone call from Angie where she said,
could you please, please, please come to see me because I've just had a miscarriage.
And I couldn't come right then. But we looked at the calendar and we figured out that I could come. In just a couple of short weeks, I could be there.
And she did.
I flew into the blizzard to be here.
God even arranged it for extra days.
It was only because the reconciliation was possible that I was able and willing to fly into the storm to be with my friend when she really, really needed me.
So, my friends, I don't know what relationships that you have in your life that have been rocky. The places where you feel like you have disappointed another, or another has disappointed you. But today it is all about naming those that we have harmed. And being willing to make amends. Finding the space in our heart to be willing to make amends with the one who has hurt us, with the one that we have hurt. And let me tell you, this kind of beauty, this kind of friendship is a choice. We choose to love one another. Nadia Bolz-Weber, when people join her congregation, she tells them, I, as your pastor, am going to disappoint you. And let me tell you, I, as your pastor, am going to disappoint you. We are going to disappoint one another. And times we are going to hurt each other. But if you take your toys and go home when that break happens, if you stop being in relationship, if you decide that you won't ever talk, and taking space is okay. I'm not, that's, we all need our space. But enter back in. Because when you do, reconciliation and love and resurrection happen. Resurrection happens. To this day, we are a God of new starts and new beginnings and life and joy and friendship. This, my friends, is the good news of God given for you this day. And let us say, thanks be to God.